Steve Harvey stood center stage at the Family Feud studio in Atlanta, his signature burgundy suit catching the studio lights as he held the microphone with practiced ease. The audience was energized, clapping rhythmically as the theme music faded. Today's contestants were facing off, the Johnson family from Tennessee versus the Martinez family from California. But it was the special guest segment that would change everything. An 89-year-old woman named Dorothy Mitchell sat in the front row, her silver hair styled in elegant waves, wearing a simple floral dress and pearl necklace. Her eyes sparkled with something Steve couldn't quite identify yet. Was it mischief, wisdom, or something deeper? Quick pause. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story is reaching. Now back to the story, because what happens next is unbelievable. All right. Steve's voice boomed through the studio with that familiar energy that had made him a household name. Before we continue with our families, we have a very special guest today. Ms. Dorothy Mitchell, everybody. The audience erupted in applause as Dorothy waved modestly, a gentle smile on her weathered face. Steve approached her, microphone in hand, settling onto the edge of the stage to be closer to her level. Ms. Dorothy, I understand you have quite a story to share with us today. My producers have been keeping this secret from me all week, saying I needed to hear it live. So tell me, what's this all about? Dorothy adjusted her glasses, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. When she spoke, her voice was surprisingly strong, clear, carrying the weight of decades of lived experience. Well, Steve, I'm 89 years old. I've been doing something every single day for the past 60 years. Never missed a day. Not once. Steve's eyebrows shot up. 60 years? Not one day. Ms. Dorothy, I can barely do my morning routine for 60 days straight. The audience laughed, but Steve's curiosity was genuinely piqued. What is it? Exercise? Prayer? Reading? I visit prisoners, Dorothy said simply. The studio fell silent. Steve's smile faltered slightly, his head tilting as he processed what she just said. I'm sorry, come again? I visit prisoners. Every single day for 60 years. I go to prisons, county jails, state penitentiaries, federal facilities, and I sit with men and women who society has given up on. I talk to them. I listen to them. I pray with them if they want. I see them as human beings. Steve stood up slowly, the microphone dropping slightly in his hand. His usual quick wit, his immediate comeback, his signature reactions, all of it vanished. For perhaps the first time in his decades-long career, Steve Harvey was genuinely speechless. Every single day, he finally managed, his voice softer now, stripped of the performance energy. Every single day. 60 years. That's 21,900 days. Give or take. I counted once. Dorothy's eyes were moist now, but she wasn't crying. She was simply present, authentic, raw. Steve walked a few steps away, his back to the audience, his hand on his forehead. The cameras kept rolling, capturing something they rarely got, a genuine, unscripted moment of overwhelming emotion. When he turned back around, his eyes were red. Hold on. Steve's voice cracked. You're telling me that for 60 years, through holidays, through birthdays, through sickness, through everything, you spent your time with people behind bars? Yes. Why? The question came out almost as a whisper, amplified only by the microphone still in his hand. Dorothy took a deep breath, and what she said next would become one of the most replayed moments in television history. Because 60 years ago, my son killed someone. The audience gasped collectively. Steve froze completely, his entire body rigid. His name was Thomas. He was 19 years old, angry, lost, involved with the wrong people. He got into a fight outside a bar in Memphis. He didn't mean to kill the other boy. It was one punch, wrong place, wrong angle. But that boy died. And my Thomas went to prison for manslaughter. 15 years. Dorothy's voice remained steady, but tears were flowing freely now. The first time I visited him, I saw something that broke my heart. I saw hundreds of young men, mostly black and brown, sitting in that visitation room. And you know what I noticed? Most of them had nobody. No visitors. No family. Nobody who cared enough to show up. Steve sat down right there on the stage floor, cross-legged like a child listening to a grandmother's story. The audience was completely silent, some people holding hands, others with tissues out. My Thomas had me. I visited him every single day that facility allowed, which was every day. I drove 2 hours each way. I sat across from him in that horrible room with the plastic chairs and the vending machine coffee, and I told him that one mistake didn't define him. That he was more than the worst thing he'd ever done. That God wasn't finished with him yet. But here's what happened, Dorothy continued, her voice growing stronger. While I waited for my turn to see Thomas, I started talking to the other young men sitting there alone. Boys with no visitors. Boys who looked so hungry for just a kind word, just acknowledgement that they existed. And I thought, if my son needs me, how much more do these boys who have nobody need someone? Steve wiped his face with his hand, not even trying to hide his tears anymore. Behind him, crew members were crying. Camera operators, producers, the families who were supposed to be competing. Everyone was captured by this moment. So I started arriving earlier. I'd sit with these other boys before seeing Thomas. I'd ask about their lives, their families, what led them there. And Steve. Dorothy leaned forward, her eyes intense now. Every single one had a story. Every single one had been a child once, with dreams and hopes. Every single one had experienced trauma, poverty, abuse, neglect that led them down dark paths. What happened to Thomas? Steve asked, his voice barely audible. He served his full 15 years. He came out a changed man. He got his GED in prison, then his college degree through correspondence courses. Today he's a counselor working with at-risk youth in Memphis. He's 54 now. He's saved more lives than he took. But Steve, she paused, making sure he was really listening. He's not the only one. What do you mean? In 60 years, I've visited over 15,000 different inmates. I've kept track in journals. 15,347, to be exact. And do you know what happened to many of them after they got out? Steve shook his head, unable to speak. They stayed in touch. They call me Mama Dorothy. I have a phone tree of former inmates, men and women who are now teachers, construction workers, small business owners, fathers and mothers, productive members of society. Not all of them, of course. Some went back. Some died. Some I never heard from again. But hundreds, Steve. Hundreds turned their lives around. Why didn't you stop after Thomas got out? Steve asked. You could have had your life back. Dorothy smiled. A radiant, peaceful smile. Because I realized something. My purpose wasn't just saving my son. My purpose was showing up for the forgotten. The thrown away. The ones society crosses the street to avoid. Jesus said, I was in prison and you visited me. I took that literally. Steve stood up abruptly, the microphone falling from his hand, clattering on the stage floor with a sharp feedback sound. He walked off stage into the wings, his shoulders shaking. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or stay silent. Dorothy remained seated, calm, waiting. For 3 full minutes, an eternity in television time, Steve Harvey was off camera. The producers were frantically discussing whether to cut to commercial. But something told them to let this play out. When Steve returned, his eyes were swollen, his face blotchy, his carefully maintained stage persona completely shattered. He picked up the microphone, tried to speak. Couldn't. He tried again. I'm sorry, he finally said. I need a moment. He sat down next to Dorothy, right there on the stage, not in his host position, not performing, just human. Ms. Dorothy, he said quietly. I grew up poor in Cleveland. I was homeless for 3 years. I slept in my car. I know what it's like to be invisible, to have people look through you like you don't exist. And I always wondered, if just one person had seen me, really seen me during those years, would it have made the difference faster? Dorothy reached over and took his hand. This 89-year-old woman holding the hand of one of the most successful entertainers in the world. You weren't invisible, Steve. God saw you, and he had a plan. Just like he had a plan for my Thomas. Just like he has a plan for every single person behind those bars who people have given up on. How did you keep going? Steve asked, genuinely seeking wisdom. 60 years is a long time. You must have gotten tired, discouraged. There must have been days you didn't want to go. Oh, plenty of days. Dorothy laughed softly. Days when I was sick. Days when I was grieving. I lost my husband 30 years ago, lost my daughter to cancer 15 years ago. Days when I was just tired of seeing so much pain and brokenness. But those were the days I needed to go the most. Not for them, for me. Because in serving them, I found purpose. I found healing. I found God. Steve turned to face the audience, still sitting on the floor. Do y'all understand what we're witnessing right now? This woman has spent 60 years, doing something most of us wouldn't do for 60 minutes. 60 seconds, even. We're so quick to judge, so quick to write people off, so quick to say, they got what they deserved. He stood up, his preacher side emerging, the side that came out when he was deeply moved and had something important to say. But Ms. Dorothy looked at her son, who had taken someone's life, and said, "You're more than this." And then she looked at 15,000 other people's sons and daughters and said the same thing. Do you know how radical that is? Do you know how much love that takes? The audience erupted in applause, a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Dorothy remained seated, modest, not seeking glory. When the applause finally died down, a woman in the audience raised her hand timidly. Steve noticed. "Yes, ma'am." The woman stood, her voice shaking. "Ms. Dorothy, my brother is in prison. He's been there for 8 years. I stopped visiting him 3 years ago. I was so angry at him for throwing his life away, for embarrassing our family. After hearing you, I'm ashamed." Dorothy turned to face her. "Don't be ashamed, honey. Be present. It's not too late. He's still there, still breathing, still capable of change. Will you go see him?" The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Tomorrow. I'll go tomorrow." Another hand went up. A man this time. "My son just got sentenced to 10 years. He's 22. I don't know how to face him. I don't know what to say." "You say, 'I love you,'" Dorothy answered immediately. "You say, 'I'm here.' You say, 'This doesn't define you.' And then you show up. Again and again. That's all. It sounds simple, but it's everything." Steve had his hands on his head. Overwhelmed. "We need to pause this. We need to." He turned to his producer in the wings. "Cancel the rest of the show. I don't care about the game. This is more important." He turned back to Dorothy. "Ms. Dorothy, I want to do something. Right now. On this show. I want to make a donation to whatever organization you work with." "I don't work with an organization," Dorothy interrupted gently. "I just go. By myself. Always have." Steve's mouth fell open. "You've been doing this alone? For 60 years? No organization backing you? No funding? I have my Social Security and my late husband's pension. It's enough. I don't need much. Just gas money and the occasional vending machine snack to share." Steve turned to the camera, directly addressing the viewers at home. "Here's what we're gonna do. I'm personally donating $100,000 to Ms. Dorothy to support her work. And I'm setting up a foundation in her name for people who want to continue this mission. Visiting inmates, giving them dignity, showing them they matter." He turned back to Dorothy. "And I'm gonna visit a prison with you. Next week. You're taking me with you. I need to see what you've been seeing for 60 years. Dorothy smiled. "You're welcome to come, Steve. But I warn you, it will change you. You can't look into the eyes of broken men and women seeking redemption and walk away the same person. Good, Steve said firmly. I want to be changed. The episode that was supposed to be a typical family feud game show became something else entirely, a viral phenomenon. Within hours, clips were everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, news programs. Steve Harvey walks off stage was trending worldwide. But it wasn't scandalous. It was profound. The follow-up was even more powerful. True to his word, Steve accompanied Dorothy to Georgia State Prison the following week. Cameras documented it not for entertainment but for education. The episode showed Steve sitting across from inmates, listening to their stories, seeing their humanity. At one point, he sat with a young man named Marcus, 23 years old, serving 20 years for armed robbery. What would have changed your path? Steve asked him. Marcus thought for a long time. If someone had seen me, really seen me, not as a statistic, not as a problem, not as a thug, just as a kid who needed help, who needed guidance, who needed someone to believe in me. Steve looked at Dorothy, who was sitting with an older inmate across the room, both of them laughing about something. She sees you, Marcus. She sees all of you. I know, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Mama Dorothy wrote me letters for 2 years before I finally wrote back. She never gave up. Never. Even when I ignored her, she kept coming, kept writing. Finally I thought, if this old lady who doesn't even know me won't give up on me, maybe I shouldn't give up on myself. That moment broke Steve again. The cameras captured him walking outside, standing in the prison courtyard, completely undone. The foundation Steve created, the Dorothy Mitchell Second Chance Initiative, raised $12 million in the first month. The money funded prison visitation programs across all 50 states, providing training, resources, and support for people wanting to follow Dorothy's example. It funded educational programs for inmates, reentry services for those being released, and support for families affected by incarceration. But perhaps most importantly, it sparked a national conversation about how society views and treats incarcerated individuals. Dorothy was invited to speak at churches, universities, and conferences. Her message was always the same. They are not their worst mistake. They are human beings capable of redemption. And sometimes all it takes is one person showing up, saying, I see you. You matter. 6 months after that Family Feud episode, Steve hosted a special primetime program called Dorothy's Legacy. It featured stories of former inmates whose lives had been changed by her visits. There was James, now a pastor in Houston; Maria, a nurse in Chicago; Deshawn, a youth counselor in Baltimore. All of them credited Dorothy with being the turning point, the one person who didn't give up when everyone else had. But the most powerful moment came when they brought out someone Steve didn't know was coming. Thomas, Dorothy's son. Now 54, he walked onto the stage wearing a suit, carrying himself with dignity and purpose. Steve stood to greet him, shaking his hand firmly. Your mother is remarkable. She saved my life, Thomas said simply. But not just by visiting me, by showing me what unconditional love looks like, by demonstrating that our purpose can emerge from our pain. My mistake took a life, but my mother's response has helped save thousands. That doesn't erase what I did, but it gives it meaning. He turned to his mother, sitting in the same chair she'd sat in 6 months earlier. Mama, I want you to know, I'm going to continue your work. When you can't go anymore, I will. The 15,000 people you've visited, I'm going to make it 30,000. Your legacy won't end. Dorothy stood, embracing her son as the audience wept openly. Steve couldn't even pretend to maintain composure. He just stood there, witnessing something holy, something profound, something that television rarely captures. The raw beauty of redemption. In the final moments of the show, Steve addressed the camera directly. 60 years. Every single day. Ms. Dorothy could have chosen bitterness after her son's mistake. She could have chosen isolation, shame, anger. Instead, she chose love. Radical, inconvenient, life-changing love. She didn't just visit prisoners. She freed them. Not from their cells, but from the belief that they were worthless, that their lives were over, that nobody cared. He paused, letting the weight of it settle. I don't know what your 60-year commitment could be. Maybe it's not visiting prisons. Maybe it's mentoring kids, feeding the homeless, supporting single mothers, caring for the elderly. But I do know this, every single one of us has the capacity to do what Dorothy did. To see the invisible, to love the unlovable, to show up when everyone else has walked away. Steve walked over to Dorothy one final time. Ms. Dorothy, thank you. Thank you for reminding us what it means to be human, what it means to live with purpose, what it means to love like Jesus actually taught us to love. Not in theory, not in comfortable ways, but in the hard places with the difficult people for the long haul. Dorothy smiled that same peaceful smile. Thank you for listening, Steve. And thank you for using your platform to shine light in dark places. That's all we're called to do, shine light. The rest is up to God. This story isn't about Steve Harvey or even about Dorothy Mitchell. It's about every single person we write off as beyond redemption. Every person we cross the street to avoid. Every mistake we define someone by forever. Dorothy spent 60 years proving that people are more than their worst moments. That showing up matters. That consistency in love can literally save lives. If the story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button and subscribe because we need more stories like this. Stories that challenge us to be better, to love harder, to see clearer. And drop a comment. Is there someone in your life you've given up on? Someone who needs you to show up? What's stopping you? Sometimes the most radical thing we can do is simply refuse to give up on people when everyone else has. Be someone's Dorothy. See you in the next story. Stay human.